How's it going, Starseekers? My name's Gotcake, and in this review we're going to be taking a look at Poopdie, Birth of the First Child. It's a dungeon crawler where you play as a worm called Poopdie, who is on a quest to defeat the evil Samron, who's unleashed a plague of vicious creatures across the land. Under Poopdie's command are a small band of poops who will do his bidding, digging up carrots, breaking containers and beating up butts. So I'm going to say already that just by that introduction, the game sounds ludicrous, and well, it is. But what do you expect with creative input coming from the mind of PewDiePie? Now, I've enjoyed PewDiePie's content over the years. I think I started watching back when he was doing funny horror game montages and Happy Wheels, but I wouldn't say I'm a die-hard fan, and this review is not going to be biased in any way. I will say now that this game is only Chapter 1, Chapter 2 has been announced and there'll likely be a third, as well as additional tiny adventures, and PewDiePie has worked with the developers at Bulbware to bring us Poopdie, so let's see how the game plays and whether or not it's worth your pennies. So the opening screen features some great artwork which give me Binding of Isaac vibes the moment I saw it. Hitting the main menu is relatively simple, which is usually the case with mobile ports, and we can take a look at the game's options, but there's not much to see, just some language and audio settings. We can also have a scout at the game's credits, and we can see a very small team worked on the game, with created in Poop from the Beardy Man himself. Back at the main menu we have two game modes, and we'll first take a look at the main story. After selecting a save slot, the game begins and we get an introduction video narrated by PewDiePie.
Beneath the dark kingdom of grounds.
Here we see Poopdie all sad because the other worms laugh at his uncontrollable bouts of flatulence, but then the mighty Poop Duck appears, giving Poopdie a bit of a pick-me-up and warning him about Samron. And so the game begins. Poopdie has crawled out of his pit of despair and Poop Duck tells him to eat 3 carrots. Now, controls in the game are pretty straightforward. We move Poopdie with the left analog stick and move over the carrots to consume them. Continuing onward, we find a shrine containing a poop scroll, and reading this we'll learn how to summon our first type of poop, simply called Poop, and it'll consume 3 carrots to do this. By pressing the B button, Poopdie will begin to strain, his ring piece puckering, and after a few seconds, out pops an adorable baby poop. Our summoned poops will follow us around, and we can use our right analog stick to move a cursor and issue them commands such as digging up carrots. Now, we can currently only summon a maximum of 2 poops, and our limit is shown in the bottom left corner. Up ahead we encounter our first enemy, a butt crawler, which will attack and deal damage to us if we get too close. Our health is seen as hearts in the top left corner, and if we lose all our health we'll die, lose all of our poop minions, and drop a stomach containing some of our items on the floor. In classic Dark Souls style, we can then return to our death location and recover the stomach and its contents. Now, we can't fight directly, but we can command our poops to fight for us, and they make swift work of the butt crawler. After issuing a command to our poops, we can also cancel the action by pressing the ZL button to recall them back to us. Before we continue, there are 3 menu buttons in the top left of the screen which I'll quickly cover. Firstly, hitting Y will display a map of the area with exits shown as blue icons. Pressing the minus button will open our stomach, showing us what items we're currently carrying, and the X button will allow you to access the shop and upgrade menu from anywhere in the game, and I'll cover these shortly. So continuing onward through this area, we come across a happy looking chap sporting a grubby chef's hat and an apron, and here we receive our first quest to clear out the butt crawlers from the plantation. After smashing a few butts to pieces with our poops, the quest updates telling us to speak to Grosswald in Poop Town, but we can first quickly pick up the offal dropped by enemies on death, and I'll cover their use later. We can also quickly take a look at the world map from this sign, and after this we can travel to Poop Town through this rather veiny orifice. Upon arriving in Poop Town, we can speak to its various inhabitants. Firstly, that ungrateful lump Grosswald won't thank us for purging his fields, but will update our quest telling us we need to speak to Ball. He'll then open his grocery store to us where we can buy materials for poop coins, the game's currency. And this is where the in-app purchases come in with the free mobile version of the game. You can get additional poop coins by watching ads or spending real world coins, and this has been stripped out with the Switch version, but all in-game items have retained the prices. Our second NPC is Marzia, who drops a Diablo reference before opening a store, which sells magic fart scrolls. There are 3 of these in the game and they act like spells. Firstly, you've got the health fart scroll, which heals both Poopdie and nearby poops. Next is the power fart scroll, which boosts poop attack power for a short time. And finally the freeze fart, which freezes enemies in an area around you. The next NPC in Poop Town is the Necromant, who looks like a giant heart with a parasitic eyeball strapped to him, and he allows you to spend currency to upgrade Poopdie and his poops. Upgrades are in the usual skill tree format, where unlocking a skill allows access to the next skill in the tree. Now Poopdie upgrades range from increasing your health, movement speed or the power of your fart spells, and upgrading poop skills increases things such as the movement speed, attack power and the number of poops you can summon at one time. You can also unlock a spiked version of poops which cost additional materials to summon. Now there are 2 other locked poop types, but sadly I don't believe they're available in this first game. So the final NPC in Poop Town is this shady looking fella who runs a wheel of fortune where you can gamble 30 poop coins to win a fart gem, which are also required for skill upgrades. Following our tour of Poop Town, we can now speak to Ball, who tells us that Edgar the Butt Dog has been kidnapped and tasks us with rescuing him. An icon then appears directing us to a nearby doorway leading to the next area. Here we find that Edgar is imprisoned and proceed to utilise our army of poops to battle our way through enemy bots, open doors which require several poops to lift, and activate switches to lower barriers. We also encounter this butt with a wizard's hat who grants us the town fart, allowing us to teleport between areas we've discovered by activating the world map sign and selecting our destination. So after working our way through this zone and rescuing Edgar, he'll head back to town. Now we can choose to follow him, but it's usually better to fully explore a zone first. You'll often find several different types of chests containing single poop coins or bags of poop coins, and there'll often be larger chests protected by Samron's spell, which will deal damage to you if opened but contain lots of loot including fart gems. You can easily recover the lost health by using healing scrolls or picking up heart pieces. So after we're done exploring, we can head back to town and talk to Ball, who will now take any of the enemy body parts off our hands whenever we speak to him in exchange for poop coins. We also get the next story quest, and thus our adventure continues. So before we end up in real spoiler territory, I'll instead talk about my own gameplay experience with Poopdie. Now I'll start by addressing the fact that the game's a mobile port. Many of the mobile ports that I review on the channel are frankly pretty shoddy. The mobile versions usually have a heavy reliance on in-app purchases, meaning that Switch ports of them end up being a grind fest. Thankfully though, when it comes to Poopdie, this isn't the case, and in-app purchases have very little impact on the game. While you do go through carrots pretty quickly in the early game due to your standard poops dying a lot, and you often end up spending coins to buy more carrots, there are still plenty of ways to farm both carrots and coins, as resources and enemies respawn in areas after a short time. I also found plenty of scroll containers through exploring, and I advise leveling your healing fart skill as soon as possible. Now I found the main problem with the game to be its controls. While they worked well in the less crowded areas, I did have a lot of issues targeting enemies further into the game, where there were many enemies and destructible objects, and this was due to the cursor snapping to random objects or enemies. There's also a bug where your cursor randomly disappears and won't reappear for a while despite you moving your right analog stick. Now both the above mentioned issues would have been remedied by touch controls. In the mobile version you can quickly direct your poops by tapping objects and enemies on your screen, but disappointingly this function is absent in the Switch version. Hopefully the cursor bug and touchscreen controls will be sorted in a future update. Now gameplay and content wise, I thought the game was pretty enjoyable, with a decent storyline and content for the price. The main story took me about 4 hours to complete without extensive exploration, but after that you can continue playing, and there's also a single tiny adventure available to play, which takes about 15 minutes to complete, and sees you collecting Christmas socks for some sad poops. The game features plenty of side areas to discover and explore, containing additional loot, and several fist dungeons filled with a gauntlet of enemies and a special chest at the end containing fart gems. Now I did like the game's poop minion dynamics, which felt similar to that of an Overlord game, and there was some decent variety to enemies including rats, mimics, giant egg masters, and of course lots of butts in different shapes and sizes. There are also several bosses in the game with their own unique combat mechanics. Lastly, I want to comment on the game's graphics, which I really liked. Whilst the themes are pretty juvenile, there's also a dark tone to the game's visuals, which is no doubt inspired by The Binding of Isaac. So now it's time to rate the game. Now I rate games between 1 and 5 stars, with the shovelware stamp of approval reserved for the worst games on the eShop. This rating is based on my own personal opinion on what a game has to offer in terms of gameplay and value for money to potential buyers. And for a rating I'd give Poopdie, Birth of the First Child 3 out of 5 stars. The game is one of the better mobile ports to hit the Switch store, and if they fix the controls it'll alleviate some of the frustrations that I expect people will have when they play it. Now there'll no doubt be people playing the game solely due to it having PewDiePie's name attached to it, but regardless of this fact, I think it has some good gameplay mechanics, and it should be given merit solely based on that. You can get the game from the UK Switch eStore for £4.49, or from the US eStore for $5. Alternatively, the game is also available on Steam, or on the Google Play and Apple App Stores for free. And that's it for this review of Poopdie, Birth of the First Child. Don't forget to hit that like button if it helped you out, and let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comment section below. And as always, consider subscribing to the channel to be notified of future Switch indie game reviews. For now though, I just want to say thanks once again for watching, and until next time, game on.